They say opportunities come when you least expect them. For me, it arrived in my inbox on a Tuesday morning. Subject line: "Congratulations. You have been selected." At that moment, I thought my life was about to change forever. And it did. Just not in the way I imagined. Before that message lit up my screen, life was an endless loop of hustle and disappointment. Every morning started with the same ritual: wake up before the sun, brush my teeth with more determination than hope, and sit at the tiny table by the window with my old laptop. I'd open job boards, scroll endlessly, and paste the same lines into applications. "Dear hiring manager, I am writing to express my interest." The words blurred together after a while, but I kept sending them. Each click felt like tossing a bottle into the ocean, praying anyone, would find it. Data bundles ate my pocket dry. Just when I'd finally see a job listing that matched my skills, boom, "You have exhausted your data." I'd rush out to the kiosk, stretch the little money I had, and buy just enough to send one more CV. I told myself it would be worth it someday. Family pressure made things heavier. Aunties at gatherings loved their favorite question: "So, where are you working now?" I would smile, clear my throat, and mumble something vague like, "I'm still processing some offers." In reality, the only thing processing was my inbox, filled with rejection emails and "we'll get back to you" messages that never did. Friends weren't any better. One by one, they posted pictures in office wear, ties, ID cards hanging proudly from their necks, captions like "new beginnings." I would like the photos, type "congrats bro," or "so proud of you sis." But deep inside, I wondered when my own turn would come. Bills didn't care about my feelings. Rent was due. Electricity tokens ran out faster than I could blink. Even the landlord's knocks had a rhythm that mocked me: steady, sharp, demanding. Hustle became survival. I picked up odd jobs, helping at a printing shop, carrying boxes at a friend's boutique, even doing late-night transcription gigs that paid peanuts. Still nothing stuck. I told myself that if I could just land one real job, everything would change. Stability, respect, dignity, those were the treasures I was chasing. So, when that email with the shiny offer letter arrived, it felt like the answer to every prayer I had whispered at night. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning, one of those days that looked exactly like the one before it. The fan had stopped spinning sometime in the night, another power cut, so I woke up sweating, my shirt sticking to my skin. As usual, I sat at my small table, opened my laptop, and prepared myself for another round of endless job hunting. My inbox was filled with the usual clutter: promotional emails, newsletters I never signed up for, and a few automatic rejections. I sighed and scrolled lazily, my eyes half asleep, until one subject line froze me in place. "Congratulations. You have been selected." At first, I didn't believe it. I thought it was spam or one of those random messages that trick you into clicking. My finger hovered over the delete button, but something made me open it. The email looked official. There was a company logo I recognized, bold at the top. The writing was polished, professional, even addressed me by name. Line after line, the words sparkled like sunlight after a storm. "We are pleased to offer you a position as Junior Administrative Officer. Report for orientation. Welcome to the team." I blinked. My heart thudded in my chest. For a few seconds, I just stared at the screen as though the words might disappear if I looked away. Then I stood up, paced the room, sat back down, and read it again. This was it. The breakthrough I had been waiting for. In my mind, everything shifted instantly. I pictured myself in a crisp shirt and tie, walking confidently into a glass front office with my ID badge swinging on a lanyard. I saw the relief on my mother's face, the pride in my family's voices when they finally introduced me as the one working with that big company. I couldn't contain myself. I laughed out loud, a real laugh, the kind I hadn't heard from my own mouth in months. My neighbor banged on the wall, annoyed at the noise, but I didn't care. For the first time in a long time, the future felt possible. Buried in the email, just after the congratulations, was a small requirement: a processing fee of 15,000 naira. I frowned. My excitement dimmed just a little. Why would a big company need money from me before I even started? I read it again. The explanation sounded reasonable, something about covering administrative costs and ensuring your placement. A voice inside me whispered, "Be careful." But another voice, louder and more desperate, argued, "This is normal. Big opportunities come with small sacrifices. Don't let this slip away." I chose to believe the louder voice. All day I wrestled with it. I replayed the email in my head, examined the logo, even Googled the company name. Everything seemed to check out. And honestly, I was too tired of failing to let doubt win. By evening, I had convinced myself this was real. But convincing myself was the easy part, coming up with the money was harder. I didn't have 15,000 naira just lying around. My pockets were already thin. So, I picked up the phone and called my cousin. He had helped me before and I hoped he would again. I spoke quickly, excitement tumbling out of me as I explained. He listened quietly, then asked, "Are you sure this thing is not one of those scams?" I paused, but only for a second. "No, this one is real," I said firmly. "They even sent me an official letter. Bro, this is my chance." He sighed. "Okay. Just, be careful." With his help, and a little extra borrowed from a friend, I scraped the money together. My hands shook as I made the transfer. It felt like betting everything on a single spin of the wheel. The moment it went through, I leaned back in my chair, breathing hard. Relief washed over me. "This is it," I whispered to myself. "This is the sacrifice before the reward." That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying all the dreams that had once felt out of reach. I imagined the text message of my first salary alert. I imagined calling my mom and saying, "Your child has made it." I imagined walking into church the following Sunday, no longer ashamed when people asked about work. For once, hope filled my chest instead of fear. I didn't know then that what I thought was a new beginning was actually the setup for the hardest lesson of my life. Friday came. The day of orientation. I woke up before my alarm, buzzing with excitement. I polished my new black shoes until they almost shone, ironed my second-hand shirt twice, and practiced my introduction in front of the mirror. "Good morning, my name is," followed by a firm handshake and a smile. As I stepped into the street, the city was already alive, hawkers shouting, buses honking, the smell of fried akra drifting through the air. But I barely noticed. My mind was already in the future. An office with air conditioning, a desk with my name, a salary at the end of the month. The address in the email led me to a commercial part of town. As I walked closer, I expected to see a tall building with glass doors and security guards in neat uniforms. Instead, I stopped in front of a narrow building squeezed between a tailor's shop and a stationery store. The paint was peeling and the sign above the door looked cheaply printed. My heart sank a little, but I told myself maybe this is just their training office. The real headquarters must be elsewhere. Inside, about 20 other young people sat on plastic chairs, all dressed formally like me. Their faces carried the same mix of nervousness and hope. For a moment, that reassured me. If this is fake, why would so many people be here? At the front of the room stood a man in a cheap suit, holding a stack of papers. He greeted us with a booming voice, welcoming us to the company. He spoke about big opportunities, growth, and how we were the lucky few chosen out of thousands. His words were smooth, but they felt rehearsed, empty, like a song he had sung too many times. Then came the real blow. "Before you can receive your appointment letters," he announced, "each candidate must complete registration by paying 30,000 naira for training materials." The room went silent. My heart dropped to my stomach. 30,000? One brave guy raised his hand. "But sir, we already paid a processing fee," he said. The man's smile didn't falter. "That was for screening. This is the final stage. Without this payment, you cannot continue." A few people shifted in their seats. Some looked around, confused. Others quietly reached for their wallets. And that's when it hit me hard. This was no job. No miracle. No breakthrough. It was a scam. The walls seemed to close in on me. My chest burned. Shame, anger, and disbelief crashed over me all at once. I thought of the 15,000 naira I had scraped together, the lies I told to borrow it, the look on my mother's face when I said I had finally made it. I wanted to vanish. I stood up slowly, my legs heavy, and walked out without a word. Outside, the street noise sounded sharper than ever. Buses blaring, hawkers shouting, laughter ringing from people passing by. The world carried on like nothing had happened, while inside me, everything had collapsed. I leaned against a wall and buried my face in my hands. For the first time in months, I didn't just feel broke. I felt broken. I walked home slowly, the weight of the walk heavier than the few coins in my pocket. The street I usually noticed for its noise felt different, louder, more foreign. People passed by with their own lives, unaware that mine had tilted. I kept replaying the man's words in my head until they became a loop. "Without this payment, you cannot continue." At the gate, my mother was sweeping the compound. She looked up, eyes bright, waiting for the news I had promised. My throat closed. For a moment I thought about turning back, marching back into that room and demanding my money, demanding answers. Then shame settled like a thick fog and I walked past her without a word. I sat on the stoop while she tied the broom and asked the same question she had asked 1,000 times. How was the orientation? I lied. It was good, I said. My voice sounded small even to my own ears. She hugged me tight, and I felt her trust like a fragile glass I was too afraid to drop. Days after, the silence in the house was louder than the noise of the streets. My phone had no congratulations, only the cold, empty space where hope had been. The landlord came by as if on schedule, a reminder of reality. Rent is due, he said, then walked away like it was the last thing on earth he wanted to say. I nodded and watched his back until it disappeared. Friends who had celebrated with likes and short messages faded into distant figures. Some checked in with awkward care, "You okay, bro?" And I gave them the usual, "I'm fine," because I couldn't find the energy to explain the mess. Others were honest and blunt in the way friends can be, "You should have been careful." Their words didn't sting as much as I thought they would. Shame had already carved its own groove. At night, sleep didn't come easily. I lay awake listing everything I had lost. Not just the money but pride, trust, the small illusions that had kept me moving. I replayed every decision that led me there. The hurried click on the email, the excuse I gave myself about fees, the way I'd glossed over red flags because hope felt rare and precious. Every what if felt like salt rubbed into a wound. The first week after the scam felt like being underwater, sound muffled, movements slow. I stopped going to the printing shop, stopped taking transcription gigs. The little jobs that had once kept me afloat started to feel pointless, like paper boats in a storm. I avoided the kiosks where I used to buy data. Even the thought of scrolling through job boards made my chest tighten. But bills didn't wait for feelings. Electricity tokens ran out. The pressure from family grew quieter but sharper, concern wrapped in thinly veiled disappointment. My mother worried openly now. "Maybe you should try something else," she said once, as if naming an alternative would make it appear. I wanted to tell her everything, that I had been stupid, that I had wanted too badly, that I had hoped a little too recklessly. Instead I put on a smile and promised to do better. Anger arrived later, slow and cold. Not just at the scammers, though I wanted to find them and scream, but at myself. I felt small for allowing myself to be tricked. I had always laughed at stories of people falling for scams, the way we all do when the misfortune is distant. Now the joke had me as the punchline. After the anger, something quieter grew, a stubborn, practical kind of resolve. It wasn't a sudden epiphany. It was a small, steady thing, an itch at the back of my mind that refused to let me stay broken. I started with little, almost invisible steps. I made a list. The list had no grand ideas, just small ones I could actually do that evening. Tidy my CV, ask the printing shop if they needed help again, reach out to that tutor who sometimes needed someone to proctor online classes. I also began to read, properly, about the scams, how they worked, the common signs. Knowledge felt like a bandage. I bookmarked articles, saved threads where people shared warnings, and even messaged someone who seemed to have exposed a scam group in a local forum. Learning didn't fix the money, but it gave me a map of the traps I'd fallen into. It made the world less mysterious and menacing. One afternoon, while scrolling through a community group with far more caution than before, I noticed a post. A small business needed someone to manage their records just part-time. The pay was little, the work basic, but the poster was real. An address, a phone number, a shop people mentioned in comments. My heart did a small, cautious skip. That evening I walked past the shop, watching from across the street. The owner waved and called me in like he recognized me from somewhere. I went in, talked, and left with a week's work to do. Simple bookkeeping, a promise to come back. It wasn't a job at a multinational. It wasn't the dream. But it was honest and it fit in my hands like something I could build from. The shame didn't vanish overnight. The money didn't return. But the small list I had made began to shrink, one item at a time. Each tick was a quiet shove away from defeat. I learned to sleep in shorter, steadier stretches. I learned to answer the landlord not with excuses but with a plan. A small repayment schedule and then a second once the shop's little wages came through. The fake offer had taken a lot. It had also, in a way that annoyed me and comforted me at once, forced me to look at how I hustled. I had to rethink my hustle, not as a frantic scramble for any opening, but as something I could shape, skill by skill, step by small step. That night I sat with my list and crossed off the bookkeeping task. For the first time since the scam, I felt the tiniest flicker of something like control. It was fragile, but it was mine. Scars don't always show on skin. Sometimes they live in your chest, tucked between the ribs, waiting to remind you of what went wrong. That scam left me with one of those scars. For weeks, I couldn't hear the words job opportunity without my stomach twisting. But slowly, quietly, I began to notice something. The experience hadn't just broken me, it had reshaped me. Lesson 1. Not all that glitters is gold. Before that email, I was the kind of hustler who leaped first and asked questions later. Hope had been my compass even when it pointed into storms. But the scam taught me something bitter and necessary. If an opportunity looks too smooth, too shiny, and too quick, it probably has teeth hidden beneath the smile. Now I research deeply. If a company sends me an offer, I don't just skim the letter. I check their registration, their physical address, their reputation in forums. I ask questions that my old self would have been too desperate to ask. Why do they need a fee? Why does this process feel rushed? Who else has worked here before me? It wasn't about becoming cynical. It was about becoming wise. Lesson 2. Pride can be dangerous. Part of what drove me into the scam wasn't just hunger for work. It was the pride of wanting to look successful in front of others. I wanted to post my own new beginnings picture, to silence the aunties, to give my mother a reason to beam at family gatherings. But pride can blind you. It makes you ignore warning signs because you're chasing an image, not reality. That fall taught me humility. It reminded me that real success doesn't need loud announcements at the beginning. The proof is in the work, in the quiet consistency, in the days you build brick by brick until one day people can't ignore the house standing in front of them. Lesson 3. Hustle is bigger than jobs. I had spent so much energy chasing employment that I forgot I could create work. Not in a grand startup founder kind of way, but in small, practical hustles that added up. The bookkeeping job at that small shop reminded me that skills are currency. And I had some organization, writing, basic digital tools. So I stopped waiting for a miracle and started sharpening what I already had. I offered to manage records for other small businesses in the neighborhood. I helped a friend create simple posters for her boutique. I even taught a neighbor's kid how to type and use Excel. The pay wasn't huge, but it stacked up slowly, and with each gig, my confidence returned piece by piece. The fake job offer didn't give me a salary. But it gave me something more important. A shift in mindset. Hustle wasn't just about chasing doors others had built. It was about learning to build windows of my own. Lesson 4. Pain can be a teacher. I used to think setbacks meant I wasn't good enough. But now I see them differently. Pain is not the end, it's a teacher with a harsh voice. That scam became my classroom. It hurt, yes, but it also taught me resilience. Whenever I feel doubt creeping in now, I remember how low I was that day when I walked out of the fake orientation. If I survived that humiliation, that shame, then what else can't I survive? The memory doesn't weaken me anymore. It sharpens me. Months later, I got another email. Another offer. This time the words looked similar, polished, promising. The difference was me. Instead of rushing, I paused. I checked, double-checked, asked around. And when I discovered it was another scam, I didn't just delete it. I forwarded it to a local online group, warning others not to fall for the same trick. That day, I realized I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was someone who could spot the traps and help others avoid them. My pain had turned into something useful. Life didn't magically transform after that. The rent still came due, bills still piled up, and the hustle remained real and raw. But inside, something had shifted permanently. I was no longer chasing blindly. I was moving with intention. And here's the truth. Sometimes the blessing doesn't come wrapped in an offer letter or stamped with a company logo. Sometimes, it comes hidden in failure, in disappointment, in the lessons that force you to grow sharper, stronger, and wiser. That fake job didn't change my life by giving me employment. It changed my life by teaching me how to truly hustle. Looking back, I sometimes laugh at the irony. The job that never existed ended up teaching me more about work, hustle, and survival than any office training ever could. It stripped me, embarrassed me, and shook my confidence, but it also built a version of me that is harder to fool, harder to break. I won't lie to you. Falling for that fake job offer hurts in ways I can't fully explain. It wasn't just the money. It was the trust, the hope, the picture I had painted of myself finally arriving. Watching that picture burn left me standing in ashes. But ashes can grow things too, if you're patient enough to plant seeds in them. The first seed was humility. I learned to stop rushing into things just because they looked like shortcuts to success. In this hustle life, shortcuts often hide the deepest holes. Real growth takes time. Brick by brick. Skill by skill. Day by day. The second seed was wisdom. I learned that research is not a luxury, it's survival. Whether it's a job, a business deal, or even a friendship, it pays to pause and ask questions. If someone pressures you to decide quickly, that's already a red flag. If money must leave your pocket before anything has even begun, pause. The third seed was resilience. That scam could have ended me, made me bitter, made me give up. And honestly, for a while, it almost did. But here I am telling you this story. If nothing else, I hope it shows you that being broken is not the end. Sometimes it's just the point where the rebuilding starts. And let me say this clearly, you're not weak if you've been fooled. You're not stupid if you've been scammed. You're human. Hunger makes us vulnerable. Desperation makes us blind. But each failure is also a teacher, and if you pay attention, the lesson will be worth more than the money you lost. Now, when I walk through the streets and see the posters taped on walls, overseas jobs, no experience needed, pay small fee, I feel a mix of anger and gratitude. Anger because I know someone else will fall for it. Gratitude because I know better now. The scars on my pride remind me, I've been there and I survived. So here's what I leave you with. Hustle smart, not just hard. Ask questions even if they make you look doubtful. Don't let the pressure to impress others push you into traps. And above all, remember that setbacks don't define you, they refine you. My story started with a fake job offer, but it didn't end there. The hustle continues. And maybe that's the real lesson. The journey is never about one big opportunity. It's about learning, adjusting, and keeping your fire alive no matter how many times the world tries to put it out. So the next time an opportunity shows up in your inbox, on your phone, or whispered in your ear, pause. Look closely. If it's real, it will stand up to scrutiny. If it's fake, don't let it take more than a moment of your time. Because your real breakthrough? It's not in the promise someone dangles in front of you. It's in the strength you build, the lessons you learn, and the refusal to let failure have the last word. That, to me, is the everyday hustle. If you've been touched by this story, then you'll find many more just like it here on AfriVibe Stories. Real tales, raw truths, and everyday experiences that reflect the lives of Africans everywhere. So don't just stop here. Make sure you explore more stories, share them with others, and stay with us as we continue to give voice to the struggles and triumphs that shape who we are.